Hey, welcome to this episode of the Spiritual Awakening Annual YouTube Summit. I am your host, Iona at the SoulLegacyTV YouTube podcast. So welcome. We've got a very special guest today. So welcome, Zanne. Welcome to this episode.
Thank you, Iona. It's lovely to be here.
Thank you. So before we dive into you sharing your spiritual awakening story and your journey over your lifetime, really, and how you do what you do today, I want to just share a little bit about how our connection came about and how why I invited you onto the show. And so what I want to do is just bring guests that I really resonate with and who will come across my path as I go on this journey. And I'm kind of guided to the people that I'm like, oh, I really must have you on the show. So Zanne and I have had a conversation, but prior to that conversation, you're very new. We're very new to each other's world. And I just saw you on Facebook speaking, literally your voice and just what you were saying was just struck me as just the most beautiful thing and the most beautiful soul, that your message and how you just spoke on camera, and you were just so encouraging to your audience, and just that understanding of and that support of wherever you are is just wherever you are kind of thing. That's what I really took from that message. So thank you for what you do in the world. So for those of you who are new to the Spiritual Awakening Annual YouTube Summit, the way that the summit works is we're streaming live on my YouTube channel. We're also streaming into the attendees Facebook group. So if you're in there, you're watching live, you're watching on the replay, then welcome. Do add your energy to this conversation. And then we'll strip it out and do a podcast as well. We also have a spiritual, what I call a spiritual ascension after show party. So as the summit runs, 9 a.m., 3 p.m. and 9 p.m. on what I call the 2 binge watch Wednesdays of the month. After those 2 middle Wednesdays of the month, we have the spiritual ascension after show, where you can add your energy, you can share your spiritual awakening, and you can also access the spiritual alchemy giveaway, because our guests are giving you gifts. They're giving you gifts to help you along your path, help you through that awakening where they were, and hopefully you'll find great value. So Zanne, let's dive into your spiritual awakening. Like I say, the idea is to just connect the dots and normalize that spiritual awakening, because as light workers, we're putting our gifts out in the world and there's that beacon of light, right? But in the contrast to that, prior to shining our light, there oftentimes is a lot of darkness and a lot of sadness and a lot of just that shift in that consciousness. Can you share a little bit about where your first spiritual, if you remember when your first spiritual awakening was and how that showed up for you?
Absolutely. But first of all, I want to just pick up on something you said about normalizing the experience. And I think that's so important. That beacon of light that you talk about is showing. That beacon of light is within all of us, and we're just not aware of it. And it's only when we start to become aware of that. And often that's because it's been dimmed in some way. And when that's really dimmed, we miss it. And we become deficient of energy, or we become ill, or there's some sort of crisis that then spurs us, that then catapults us into a spiritual awakening. And that's normally how it works.
Yeah, I agree.
In my own case, it's a case of you're not aware of what's happening or what you're doing until you realize other people aren't doing it, or it isn't happening for them. So I would say I was always very intuitive. I was always very aware. I always saw things. I always sensed things. And that was throughout my life. But I came from a background that was very, very religious, very fundamentally religious. So that wasn't encouraged. Right. So in many ways, I sensed with my own religion, and I'm not knocking religions, but in my own case, my own experience of religion, I sensed that very much it didn't support me. It didn't work in me. The Bible stories frightened me. The hell and damnation. Oh, I was hard scared, Right. And when I got old enough to think for myself, I moved away from religion, and I really separated myself from it. Right. But within that, I had associated my spirituality with religion. So in moving away from my religious experience, I cut myself off from my spirituality as well. And that was hard. Although I didn't realize it at the time, but that was hard. So I was like seeking alternatives to it. I was seeking comfort, to replace this great part of me that I wasn't connecting with at all.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until then, I'm not saying I didn't have spiritual experiences, I did. And again, I retained that sensitivity. But when I became pregnant then with my first child, I suffered a postnatal depression. And the depression totally debilitated me, because up until then I was resisting what was so natural to me. And that resistance is something I actually must talk about, because that continues throughout my life, this resistance against things.
Yes, we'll pick that up. I've underlined it.
But so I was resisting my spirituality. I went into this depression. It actually started when I was about 6 months pregnant. But once my son was born, it deepened. And I was in such a dark place. I thought the world was ending. And I'd done such a bad thing by bringing this child into the world when the world was ending, and he was going to suffer the pain of that. And it was only when I reached that very, very low place that I allowed that connection with myself. And that my guide started to come into me and talk to me, and I started to receive. I allowed myself to receive. And the initial way that happened was, I was washing the dishes one day, and I was literally compelled to put the cup down that I was washing, get a pencil and paper, and write down what was being given to me.
Wow.
And then I went back to the dishes, and then I had to stop again. Literally was compelled to stop again and take up the pencil and write down some more. Wow. And that was the first time I ever channeled. Wow. And the channeling was very, very relevant, actually, that came through. But that was the first time I ever channeled. And from then, it really threw me. It really kind of threw me into another place, if you can imagine, another mental place. And I thought, what's happening? It opened up a new door for me. So I continued to channel like that. And then I was given a succession. And when I say given, it just kind of appeared in my mind.
Right.
I became obsessed with amber. Now, no, amber's not a gemstone, but I'm going to call it a gemstone. I became obsessed with amber.
Call it what you like.
I know it's a resin, but let's just call it a gemstone for today. I became obsessed with amber. Didn't know anything whatsoever about amber. And actually, way back then in Belfast, there were no New Age shops. There was nowhere to get anything like that except the museum. So I trekked away across town to the Ulster Museum to get a wee piece of amber. And I carried that amber with me for maybe 2 weeks. And then I became obsessed with garnet from nowhere. Just the word kept repeating in my head, garnet, garnet, garnet.
Wow.
And I had to do the same thing with garnet. Wow. And I moved through a succession of gemstones. And at that stage, I didn't even know that gemstones had healing properties.
Wow.
It was just amazing, totally amazing. And then I connected in with, I was really lucky, I connected in with a counsellor here, the only one of her kind here, who was Jungian based, and used visualization and worked with the chakras. So I connected in with her. And in our first session, I'll never forget our first meeting, 2 things happened. My crown chakra opened, and it was just like, wow, I really felt it. I didn't even know what the chakras were.
Yeah.
But I just felt my head totally opening.
Right.
And the second thing was, when she was on her way to the session with me, she was walking down the street, and a water mains burst right in front of her. Just erupted in front of her.
Wow.
And she said, when she got, well, a few sessions later, she said, I knew that was you and what you're holding in. And you desperately need to release those emotions that you're holding within you.
Wow.
So that's a wee bit about my spiritual awakening.
Thank you so much for sharing. I've been writing notes. If you saw me looking down, it's because I'm writing notes, because there's so much you've unpacked. And welcome. Do add your energy to the conversation and let us know where you're watching. Zanne is sharing about her spiritual awakening and connecting the dots. And if you resonate at all, then definitely we'd love to hear from you. So, oh my gosh, there was so much there. So you mentioned at the point where it was a low point in your life, unexpectedly, in terms of, when you think, oh, I'm going to be a mum, I'm going to, birth my child, and blah, 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 and it's the flip opposite of what society portrays, that like you should be bouncing around and should be rosy and what have you. So that in and of itself anyway, and then thinking that the world's going to end because we're told whatever we're told. And then in that low point being just not even saying open, it's just it coming through you and channeling. Before that, you were saying about the religion and the belief. So I'd imagine that was quite a strange experience for you based on your background. It wasn't something that you've just asked for or what have you. There's a lot of my guests, what I'm noticing is that the theme for them, for the guests so far, is that they were brought up in as a religious background. I wasn't. I haven't never read the Bible. There's something in me that always knew that there was bigger, but what was said around religion, I never not resonated with it I just never went for it. So, I was christened, but that was kind of about it. And again, it's not bashing that religion, but what I've noticed is that the distinction between that spiritual awakening and spirituality and religion that my guests are making. So that's really interesting for me because I've heard, but there's a common theme around that. So when you say,
for me, if I come back to, for me, that's very much about the at this stage anyway, about knowing what love actually is.
Oof.
To me, that was what was underlying that, was really, to me, religion was not love.
Loving.
And that was my confusion.
And always kind, and that kindness and that, yeah. And so you're depending on which religion everybody's in. And again, it's not bashing that, but it's our own personal.
That's my experience of
it. Yeah. And owning that and being okay with saying that was my personal experience. And I think sometimes there's shame around that, like, oh, you can't say that, or you can't. Well, we can own that's our personal experience. And when others have a personal experience that is similar, then it kind of lets us know that actually you're not alone. You're not alone in that. And that's what I want this message to be. You're not alone, right? Whatever you've experienced. Yeah. And whether you've gone deep into religion and that's been through it doesn't matter, right? It's just your own personal experience. So when you talk about chat, there's so much to unpack. You talked about the depression, and that's one thing in of itself, but you talked about channeling, and that was the first experience of you channeling. And by first, I'm picking up that there was many. I know that you said that you started to channel. I don't know if I've had that experience or not, or would you just know, like anyone that's going through that awakening, would they just identify that as channeling? Like you said, at many points, you didn't know what was happening. It was only in hindsight. So what does that feel like? You stopped and you wrote, and then you went and washed the dishes, doing something mundane, right? You expect to sit on a pillow in a pilgrimage. Do you know what I mean? It's like, so what did that feel like? How did you know that was channeling? Did somebody tell you that was channeling, or did you just, as you evolved on your journey?
I want to say, first of all, I should correct myself. That was my first conscious experience of channeling.
Right. Okay.
Because I think we all channel all the time and we're not aware we're doing it. We just take that as being part of ourselves.
Okay. So that's where I go with I call that just that soul guidance. I have my Claire is that knowing, and I don't take credit for all the things. And I'm constantly, I'll do, like I'm writing now, I'll do for this summit, the idea I just have this. I have this action that like I'm just downloads. Is that what you mean by channeling, or is it something completely different? Because I don't know.
No, I think that can very much be channeling. Channeling to me is just bringing through information that isn't in our conscious mind.
It isn't in it. Right. Okay. Thank you for
And that information, we can decide for ourselves where that information comes from. We can consider it to be from spirit. We can consider it to be from cosmic. We can consider it to be from our higher self. It doesn't really matter to me where we consider it to be from. It's information that we're not holding.
Right. Get it. That's me all day long then.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's me all day long.
Yeah, and we all do it. And that's to me when I talk about and you about normalizing this experience of this growing spiritual awareness. Yeah. We all are spiritual beings, and we all do the things that we're going to be talking about today.
Yes.
Sometimes it's just making people aware of what they're doing.
Yes. And that's what I wanted to do, because I'm sitting here, pen and journal or notepad right now. in hand, because I'm like, what is it? I've been called to hold this space and have these conversations. And I'd done a summit before, which was my first summit. It was called the #1 Divine Intervention Virtual Event. I shortened it to DIVE, Social Summit for short. But it was that divine intervention, and I've had many, and that's how it felt. And so over the years, I've still been on this path where I'm going to have these conversations. And when I look back, the conversations are very similar to now. I just have positioned myself where I can hold space and schedule this interview series out for 7 years and say, hey, come and let's have a conversation. And I think that consistency in having these kinds of conversations and knowing it's not going to go away, because sometimes we do feel alone. And I really wanted everyone to say, you know what, you're not alone. And it might be weird to some people, but it doesn't feel weird to, well, maybe a little bit sometimes. Yeah. So you talked about the challenge. Thank you for sharing that. And then you talked about the kind of messages that you got. I know you didn't elaborate on them. You can if you want to. And then you talked about the gemstones, and the amber not being a gemstone, and then the garnet, and just having that word, not even reading up about it, just having that in your conscious, in your mind, pop into your mind. I want to go there and explain some of the healing properties, if you don't mind, like how that was healing for you. You're in this dark place, you're getting these messages, you're receiving that, and then you're getting the urges and the nudges to reach out and go and seek these stones. Before can you share where you are? I'm in the UK. I'm in England. Where are you in the world?
I'm in Lurgan in Northern Ireland.
You're in Northern Ireland. So I don't know. So I wanted to hold a retreat in Ireland, and they say that some of the places are quite spiritual and quite sacred. And I don't know if that is the norm around where you are. So can you explain?
It is.
Yeah. Can you explain some of the gem for someone who is completely new, and I mean basic me, to like because I get knowledge. I'm getting educated. I'll ask the questions that I need, and hopefully, if you guys, even on the replay, you can ask Zanne questions. So the gemstones, which the amber is not a gemstone, but you consider it that sacred stone, and it had those healing properties. Can you, if somebody's completely new, it's like, but you were given this message to search for these stones. You had it on your person for 2 weeks. Why? Like, what does that do for somebody? Because you might take it for granted, like, well, it's obvious now, but at the time, it was just that message. So can you explain that a little bit, please?
I have to say, I'm still not very much into gemstones, although I know they're very powerful, but they're not really one of the tools that I use very often. So my knowledge is limited in relation to them.
No, mine's
but
more.
What they do, crystals have a very structured form. And because they're so structured, it's like a grid. Because they're so structured, they generate a specific energy. Because we know crystals are communicators. We use crystals in our watches. We use crystals in our computers. We use quartz all around us.
But we say that we know, and sometimes people don't know. Do you know what I mean? It's like okay, well, let's go advanced. Okay, let's just break it down to the. And when you say quartz, and I hear that, and I'm like, oh yeah. The first time I heard that, I was like, oh, I hadn't linked the two things.
Yeah, no, you're right. You're totally right. So quartz crystals are a communicator, and we use those in computers. We use those in radios. We use those in watches for communication. They transmit waves in some way or other. I don't know how they do it, but they transmit waves of energy in some way or other. And they do the same thing in their raw form. And because we're beings, because we're vibrational beings, the energy that we use resonates at a certain vibration. And you can kind of experience that. We talk about being in a low mood or a high mood, and that's linked to the vibrational energy that we're transmitting. So when we're in a low mood, that vibration is lower. When we're in a high mood, our vibration's higher.
Yeah.
The energy of crystals can balance our vibration, our own vibration. And they all have particular properties. And it's because I say the energy of the crystal itself is so structured. It's form, its composition is so
Yeah.
structured that you can dictate, or you know what vibration, what frequency is going to transmit.
You're going to be resonating at, because you've got this. So when you were in the lower, so correct me if what I'm hearing is you were in that lower vibration,
Completely.
not knowing what's really going on, and probably not finding a way to get out of that, and then having the messages, and then having that experience, and then being drawn to something that's from the earth that was going to naturally raise your vibration, whether you know it or not.
And each crystal has its own healing property because of that.
Right. Wow.
So amber is very much, as I remember it, amber is very much about finding comfort.
Wow.
And being held.
Yeah.
Garnet is very much about the base chakra.
Wow.
And about rooting and grounding back into the earth, because I wasn't grounded in any way.
Anyway. And when you're not grounded, so anyone that's going through that awakening, when you're not grounded, so I talk about the spiritual awakening experience, and then the spiritual ascension tools, which the crystals and the gemstones can be, and then alchemizing our gifts, like what have we done to then package up our knowledge and give back. And I know that you're doing that. So when someone's going through that awakening and they're drawn to certain things, and they're balancing out their energy, like what would you speak into that? Like just that reassurance that they're on that path, they'll get what they need, they'll be drawn to, you got what you needed.
Absolutely. What I would say to people, and it's very much what happened to me, and funny, I was talking about this yesterday as well, is we just need to get out of our own way.
Big.
And the only way the means that I got out of my own way was through depression. For my big awakening was through depression.
Yeah.
And because I was so fatigued and so overwhelmed, I didn't have the energy to hold myself, to hold my ego in place.
The resistance.
My ego, so I got out of my own way. And what's the wisdom that's within me and that's within everyone?
Yeah.
I was able to hear it.
I love that.
I was able to access the support around me. And that's what it's all about.
Yeah.
I really want to emphasize, we all have that wisdom and that knowledge and that ability. We just need to get out of our own way.
And that's what you're sharing with your gifts. So part of the spiritual awakening, part of my work is living intentionally. And when we go through a spiritual awakening, when I went through my spiritual awakening through many different areas, because we go through multiple, right? We don't just go through one and that's it, we're done. I know that. And so the different areas of my life. And so I talk about intentional living and raising our vibrational frequency through our contribution, through our health, through our emotions, the depression, right? The relationships, the spirituality, religion and spirituality, and through our finances. So we might experience the awakening through the different areas of our life, like you've said, through the religion, the spirituality, and through the emotions, through the depression, and recognizing that. And it changes the trajectory of our life. That is what an awakening is. But sometimes we resist, like that dark night of the soul, we resist, like, I don't want this to happen, especially, I don't look squeaky in society, everything, my world is collapsing behind closed doors, and I feel ashamed, I feel embarrassed, but that's part of that normalizing that actually, it's necessary to go through that. Exactly as you say, you're allowing that shift in consciousness. You're not holding on, you're not resisting, you're receiving what it is that you need to receive to get to that next level. And unfortunately, we don't get to skip the stages. We can hold space for one another, but we don't get to skip those stages. So what other areas would you say that your life has been affected through a spiritual awakening? You talked about depression, the emotion, and the spirituality moving away from that. Is there any other areas that you would say, actually, my life has shifted, I've had an awakening experience?
In every area, literally, because you can't, because it isn't isolated. Do you know what I mean? We're talking about, changed vibration isn't isolated. It encompasses everything.
It does, and it's all connected. And so for me, I've been through a divorce, and for me, relationships, and I've been through like finances, I've been through bankruptcy, I've had my home repossessed. Do you know what I mean? There was this catalyst of my life unfolding, which affected every single area. It's like that snowball. But there's other times when it's just been like an awakening, maybe my twin flame relationship, my twin flame union. I think that sometimes, and then what I used was, as you mentioned, vision, the vision boards to rebuild every area of my life because they are connected. Is there anything where you're like, okay, well, this was an area that I thought would go one way and it's actually gone the complete opposite way? You've hit a rock
Well,
bottom.
everything, as I say. I mean, after the depression, which I
Yeah.
have to say, I even resisted the depression itself. I'll just say this:
Did you?
my mother
Yeah.
suffered from terrible depression throughout her life,
Right.
and she would have been in hospital, and she would have had breakdowns. And I promised myself I would never be depressed.
Wow.
So I wouldn't allow myself to literally wouldn't allow myself to experience depression, which would have waked me much earlier. I wouldn't
Wow.
allow myself to have that experience until the birth, until the pregnancy.
Wow.
And then, so that was a surprise that even happened.
That's interesting, isn't it? Until you were about to become a mother.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Then my relationship broke down. Then, I mean, very much like yourself.
Everything.
Then my house was repossessed.
Wow. Yeah. Hurts.
Yeah, that's very much like yourself. And every time something happens, it's like, certainly still now, but more so in the earlier years, it was like the worst thing that could ever happen.
Yes.
Until you managed to see some light in it.
Yes.
And it was only as that, I mean, for example, the house being repossessed.
Yeah.
I was devastated. I wasn't living in it at the time. My partner was living in it. I was devastated. I was angry. I was holding all these emotions. I didn't appreciate that these are the emotions that I was actually holding towards myself.
Oh.
And it was only when that happened that I was able then to start to unpick some of those emotions, some of those beliefs that I had about myself. And that's very much what the dark nights of the souls are about, and what these, what we consider to be catastrophes, are about. They're reflecting back to us the beliefs that we hold about ourselves, our belief in our own unworthiness, our shame, or whatever it is. So each and every one of them is an opportunity to unpick that, and maybe not even to unpick that, but to let some of that go.
Yeah, I love that. So thank you for sharing. So I've got this arrow that I broke, right? And I can't tell you exactly how I broke it, but like I broke it, right? At a Millionaire Mind Intensive. And it says, I don't know if you guys can see this, I'm not worthy. This was like 12. It says, I'm not worthy. 12 years ago. And that was, my house was repossessed. My home was being repossessed and about to, excuse me. And I'd gone to the Millionaire Mind Intensive and done all of the stuff that they do. And 4 days or a few days after that, I'm not worthy, the house was released, it was sold, it was blah, blah, blah. So exactly that. And I've not connected that. I knew the story of it, but I did, when you say the beliefs that you held about yourself, and then that your internal world changes and your external world changes, right? And so when we think of, resisting all of these experiences, it's like, but those are experiences are there to help us along the way internally, so that our outer experiences can change. And that I say I move from a poverty consciousness to a prosperity consciousness, and that's what I teach now. And I teach from that space because I don't have that fear. Do you know what I mean? I don't have the fear of losing it all, doing the thing, because I've done it. I've been there. So thank you for sharing. So in terms of what you do now, what you do today, how is your spiritual way? You can share what you do and who you do it for. How is your spiritual awakening impacted the kind of tools that you use for your spiritual ascension? You talked about gemstones were in the early days. It's not something that you always use now. What spiritual ascension tools do you use, and how does that influence the work that you do in the world?
The tools I use are only tools.
Yes.
And I know, I'm very aware they're only tools, and very often they're only tools for the sake of my clients or the people who are coming to see me, because people like to see something.
Yes.
I like because it reassures them in some way that something's actually happening.
Something's happening. Something's tangible. Like we're on it. Yeah. Hear that.
So I may use cards.
Mhm.
I do regressions, but
Mhm.
in truth, my tool is within me. My tool is
Right.
my energy.
You're
And
right.
this is the same with everyone else. Again, I'm saying nothing here that other people can't do or don't possess.
Yes.
My tool is my inner knowing. So when, for
Yeah.
example, I connect with someone on a soul reading or soul
Mhm.
level,
Yeah.
my aim is to connect them to their wisdom more deeply, to their soul more deeply, to their
Yeah.
gifts more deeply.
Yeah.
To almost be a doorway for them to walk through. Okay.
Wow.
Everything I do, absolutely everything I do is about connecting people with who they really are.
Yeah.
Because we've forgotten who we are.
Yeah.
We've
Yeah.
been told that we aren't powerful, especially as
Mm.
women. And as for men as well, I appreciate that, but maybe in a different way for men.
Yeah.
But we've been told that we aren't powerful, and a lot of us have internalized that.
Mm-hmm.
One of the greatest gifts that I received through my awakening process when I
Mm-hmm.
was young, and in that religious
Mm-hmm.
environment,
Mm-hmm.
love was something I didn't understand.
Right.
And love was something that, and I'm not saying I'm not loved or I wasn't loved. I was loved, but it was never
Yes.
expressed.
Didn't feel.
There's no way of expressing love.
Mm-hmm.
And the word was never mentioned in our life.
Wow.
And sorry, in our house, in my,
I,
when I was a child, that word was never mentioned. So I
mm-hmm.
didn't have a relationship with love. It's a weird way. It's a strange thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I misinterpreted what it was.
Wow.
And I remember being at school, and I was maybe 11 or 12, and this girl saying to me, "God is love," and I'm like, "How do you figure that out? You know, and how can you even say, excuse me, how can you even mention the word love in such a casual manner when it brought up so much for me?"
Yeah. Like, how'd you figure that out? That's funny. Oh, wow.
So my journey has literally been about connecting with love
Wow.
and exploring love and finding out what love really is, and recognizing that love is the greatest power, and that we are all love, and
Yes.
it's not this wishy-washy emotion.
Oh, can
Um,
I get an amen for that? That is where I've been over this last few weeks, right there where you've said, yeah. That's new for
and
me.
opening my heart to receive that was one of the
Yes.
hardest things I ever had to do. I mean, this time I will go back a lot of years, but there's a stage when I couldn't even have talked about the word at all. Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean? So that has been my journey, and that has been the connection within me.
Yeah.
And it's been through that heart-centered connection that I work with other people. It's always about love. It's always about compassion. It's always about receiving ourselves as we are. It's always about being kind. And I know these can sound like very gentle concepts, but they
Yeah.
aren't.
Not
They
at
are
all.
powerful. They are
Mhm.
determinating. They are, um,
A force. It's a force.
a complete,
Yeah.
absolutely. So so that's very much what my
Thank
tool is in
you.
my work.
Thank you for saying that, because that's what I felt. As I said, when I just heard you, welcome. Do let us know where you're watching from, and do join the conversation. Hopefully you found what Zanne is sharing inspiring, because I am. So when I heard you speak, excuse me, on your Facebook, I literally opened it and you were talking on a video, and that is what I felt. I was like, oh, I have to have you on. We'd not engaged before that, and I was just like, I have to have you on and speak to, and gracefully you said yes straight away, and I was like, I just felt that. And that's the journey, you get what you need at the time, and that's the journey and now we're only just having this conversation now, right here in this moment, and connecting the dots, because that's just how it works, if you're willing, right? And so it was the energy of that wishy-washy, as she said, that like 1 minute I love you, next minute I don't, and relationships, because I'm going on that, whole relationship and that spiritual dating and that journey. And I talk about that on what I call Relationship Freedom Friday on the 7 Freedoms Frequency podcast. So I go live daily talking about each area of my life and journaling and visualization. And so I will be doing another channel, a YouTube channel on spiritual dating. And for me, it isn't about any longer. And it's only literally the last few weeks that I realized that is not, for me personally, that is not love. 1 minute I love you and 1 minute I don't. Love can't be broken. And I'm like, oh, which put a whole different ball game into me even wanting to be in union with somebody else. I'm not then seeking, and I'm not a needy person anyway, but I'm just not seeking that. It doesn't matter. Like, I can be in union with you, have this experience in life because I want to get married. And my ex had said, well, good luck to you if you don't believe in love and you want to get married. And I said, I believe in love. I believe in love and the energy of love, and it just is. And I don't believe, and I'm not going to buy into that. You love me 1 minute and I love you. When you love yourself, just loving, it's so. And it took me a little while. I've shared it on my daily podcast as I've been going through this journey, and I'm like, it sounds so weird to me, but it doesn't. At the same time, I couldn't find the words to really express it. And then anyone that came on live's like, nah, I get it, but I'm just like, it was so alien to even discover that. And it just dawned on me. I'd gone through probably a mini awakening, right? And I was just laying in bed, and I was just, it's like, this doesn't make sense to me anymore. I just like, wow. So you going through that and not even being able to mention the words. So thank you for all that you've done, that you can bring that to those who are in that position where they don't feel comfortable with even saying that, and they don't feel worthy of that, because I know that there are people that experience that, and we drop off and we, go back to not remembering and all the things. It's not, oh, well, once you remember, we just keep evolving and keep growing. I love that journey. And you said that through your soul work, you're the tool, that energy. And then you said that you take people, you use cards, and I've seen you do your daily. Is it a daily card reading that you do? I love that. Just little messages and little snippets. But you talked about the regression. Can you share more for somebody who doesn't know what that is before we do wrap up, and then we share what you're going to give to the spiritual giver?
The regression, what I call it a regression, is hypnotherapy, and it's past life regression.
Right.
And what it is really, how to explain it? There's two levels.
Why would I need what? Why would I feel like I'd come to you for a past life regression?
People are normally drawn to me. People normally come to me and say, I don't know why I'm here, but I just feel I have to do this with you. Okay. But a regression can, for example, when you're in a spiritual path, the regression can just give you more clarity, can just push you a wee bit more forward. It's very healing, physically, mentally, emotionally. It gives you insight into patterns, repeated patterns of behaviors. There can be ancestral clearing within the regression. If there's a soul release needed, that can happen within the regression. There's lots of things can be happening within the regression. But the regression itself is a really loving experience because it's led by your higher self. So you're held by your higher self throughout the regression. And you're always taken to see the experiences, the other lifetimes that are important for you to see. Now, those lifetimes aren't necessarily in the past, because everything happens in this moment in time.
Yeah.
This is maybe another discussion, but I'm just going to mention
we'll have you back on.
Everything happens in this moment in time that we're in. We can't move out of this moment.
Right.
So therefore, everything is happening. The past, the present, the future, in between lifetimes, all happening in this particular moment that we're in now.
Wow.
So we can jump timelines, or we can move our awareness to another life experience that we're having.
Yeah.
So for that reason, when you're being regressed, you can go anywhere. You can go between lives, you can go to the afterlife, you can go to the future, you can go to the past, you can go cosmic, you can go anywhere. Wow. But you're always taken to somewhere that has the most learning for you in relation to your current lifetime.
So you guide people through.
So it's just a tremendous, it's a very profound experience.
Mm-hmm.
And you get insight into yourself in a way that you won't allow yourself to
To
in your
see.
conscious mind,
Yeah.
And for some people, it's such life-changing. I mean, people after the regression have said things to me like, I know my life purpose now. I know why I'm here.
Oh, wow.
Or I remember one woman saying to me, it was so funny. One woman came out of it and she said to me, I don't believe that happened. I don't believe any of that. I really don't believe I was regressed. And I said, well, just give it a few months and see what happens.
Yeah.
Within 2 months, she'd changed her work. She set herself up in the business she'd always wanted to be in. She had downloaded a new modality from Spirit that she was practicing with people, and her life was totally changed.
Transformed.
And these are the things that she'd been shown during the regression, but she wouldn't believe.
Really?
Yeah,
Wow.
there's so many experiences, but as a healing modality, primarily as a healing modality.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's much, much more than that. And people are just interested. It's just lovely to have that time for you to find out about you. And to
Yeah.
love
So
yourself more during it.
thank you. So part of the spiritual awakening on YouTube summit, you see the soul legacy movement, and it's that launching, leading, leaving your soul legacy with ease, grace, and flow. And when we're all up in our humanness and not allowing that to express in this lifetime, there's blocks there. So I love that, and I hadn't known. And when I, like I said, we connected, and before we got on a call, I was sharing with you that I went onto your website, and when I saw that the past life regression, I went like this. So what's going to happen? I was like, because I didn't know why you had come into my world. I just knew, well, we'd come into each other's world, but it was just like there was just that resonance, and you saying what you're saying, because obviously for me teaching that when you go through that awakening, your soul purpose and what you're here for, what you're called to do, and having people around you that get that calling on your soul, because it does not go away whether you allow it in this lifetime or whichever. For me personally, it doesn't go away. This never went away. From the first summit to now, it's just got more clarity and more defined and more, and I'm just like, okay. I'll do it. Just all right, and we just go about the business of fulfilling our soul purpose. So I love that you support your clients in doing that. So we're going to wrap up in just a second. I want to respect your time. So we have the spiritual alchemy giveaway, and we were talking as before we came live as what would be a gift. I loved like the gemstones and the just what you feel called to. I'd love like something like that. Or you were saying about connecting to your inner wisdom. What would you say that would be the best gift to give our audience in the spiritual alchemy giveaway to support them in maybe if they're feeling that low and disconnected, or they're just curious about, okay, well, what was my past life, to connect to that inner wisdom? What would be the first step in them connecting to their own inner wisdom if they are just not?
To get out of their own way.
Okay. Yeah.
And I would love to talk to people, to tell people how to do that.
Okay. So we'll
help them on that path. And when I say to get out of their own way, what we do is we tie ourselves up. We tie ourselves up with worry. We tie ourselves up with responsibility. We think we're being responsible to ourselves. We're not. We're holding ourselves responsible to others.
Right. Okay.
And the key to all this,
if you were to do like so many steps or like a little video training or what have you, what would that include? What can they expect in the give up as an upgrade? So we have this for free on the YouTube channel, and then the upgrade is $11.11, and then you can come to the Spiritual Ascension after show again and get our guest giveaway. So yeah, what would you say for them? I've heard so many nuggets that you share.
I would just like to start at the beginning and just explain to people what it is they actually hold within them. and
Right.
explain to them how powerful they really are.
Right.
And then to take them on a journey that'll
Yeah.
help them connect to that wisdom and to
Right.
begin to trust their intuition. Because
Right.
that's the basis. That's the basis of all awakening, is
Mm-hmm.
trusting who you are, getting to know who you are.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
that's about working with your intuition. That's about
Mm-hmm.
listening to yourself. That's about meditating or finding your quiet, peaceful
Mm-hmm.
place. And it's about
Mm-hmm.
loving yourself.
Oh, were there 5 steps there?
There were.
We'll watch it on the
Something like that.
replay. That's what you're going to get in there. So we're co-creating in this space because it's just it's sometimes we are so far on this journey and this path and the beginning steps and I just want to hold space for those of you who are on your the beginning of the awakening and you're really not sure, because where I searched was YouTube. It was spiritual, and I watched so many videos on other people's awakening, and I was like, okay, that's what I want to do. That's where I want to connect that. And so sometimes we think, people know, and we don't all know. I literally would have loved to have had a consistent series where I could ask questions and I could come back on the replay, and I could have a space where I can share and I can get on a live call, which, let me just pull this up. You can get on the live call. And so this season again runs through. Oh no, I didn't put it on there. This is your season. But so you can come to the Soul Legacy Academy and /courses/summit, and you can enroll in the Spiritual Ascension After Show and get all of the guest gifts right through from October through to
Fantastic.
April. And yeah, and I just think it's just somewhere that you can go where people actually understand you. It's the beginning of the season, and I've scheduled this out for 7 seasons.
I think it's
for
wonderful.
7 years, and I'm just like,
Wonderful.
say what now? This is why I'm like, okay, all right, that's where I'm going to be. And at the end of the season, and before we just wrap up, I'm going to respect your time. I just want to share this little story of, I am actually hosting a co-author book series, sharing your spiritual awakening story. So I'm the founder of the Soul Legacy Academy, and the co-author book series is called the Soul Legacy Journal, Spiritual Awakening Stories of 365, so that you can share what you do in the world, but how it actually started, so it inspires others, and we're connecting those dots. And when I shared that with you, Zanne, you said that you had a similar idea, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because I think it's so important for us to share those stories and to hold each other in
Yeah.
that space and to have that connection. And
Yeah.
yes, I had always wanted just to give people, ordinary women,
Yeah.
their opportunity to speak and to recognize their gifts to others and to themselves.
Yeah, 100%. And I was, and I was just like, okay, I will do it. We'll hold space for it. So here we are. So thank you so much for your time. I will ask if you've got anything else to add and where people can find you. So thank you again. Just the spiritual awakening journey is, I think it's rude. So I'm just saying it's not always easy, right? I'm like, no, it's so rude. But when we detach from actually getting bogged down in it, which we do, but when we're coming out of it, we know that we can come out of it and come out of it even brighter light and being that beacon of light in the world. So I love it. So the purpose of this.
Can I just say quickly, and I should have mentioned this during this, it is difficult. The spiritual awakening can be difficult, but it's difficult because of our resistance.
Yes.
Life is messy, and we're human, and we're here to be human, and we're here to experience that mess.
Yes.
But that mess becomes more difficult when we resist it.
Yes. And that's the space that I was in. And I teach to take your soul path of least resistance, because when we do, there's a freedom in that. There's a real freedom and a birthing of so many amazing things. So part of this spiritual awakening, and usually something, again, Zanne's shared for the 9 a.m. slot. And then we would go live again, at 3 p.m. and then again at 9 p.m. So on the 2 middle Wednesdays of the month, I call them binge watch Wednesdays. There is a playlist on the Soul Legacy TV, Spiritual Business Success with Iona, on the YouTube channel. If you Google that or you YouTube it, you'll find it, and then you'll find other guests also sharing their spiritual awakening story, because I just binge watched so many. I was just like, I need to know, and I was searching and I was seeking, and I think when you're ready, you'll get the message from each of the guests that you need to hear. So thank you again. And if you're in the attendees group, and if you're not in the attendees group, come in, and if you are, then add your energy to this conversation. So Zanne, you have the last words before we do say goodbye. So yeah, anything that you'd like to add?
I think what you're doing is wonderful. First of all, I want to apologize for the noise in the background. That's my dog becoming unsettled. So the tippy tapping of the paws.
Thank you.
And yes, and just to tell people that I can be contacted. Probably the best place to contact me is through my own Facebook page, just Zanne Montgomery. I also have a website, which is a bit out of date, I have to say. But the website is heartcentered.co.uk.
Yeah, I'll put the link
my
in the
email address. So, yes, that's heart-centered, heart-centered.co.uk. And my email address is Zanne, ZANNE, at heart-centered. And again, it's HART-CENTRED.co.uk. And just to thank everyone for being here. And thank you for having me on.
You're absolutely welcome. So, if you want to reach out to Zanne personally and just, I want everyone to give you so much love for sharing, because you've shared so openly. And that takes courage to do that, to actually go through what we've gone through. But because we're doing our healing work in the world, because we're doing our light work in the world, we have a duty to share it, to reach back, in my opinion, and support others who are on that soul path. So thank you again. And I shall see you guys for the next episode in the Spiritual Awakening and Your YouTube Summit. Take care.